Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmettmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast. This is your host, Emmett Muckles. We're doing it again. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Google Play, anywhere that there are podcasts. If you have any problems, you can always go to emmettmuckles.com. Now, remember, guys, please go to the website. If you'd like to get updates, you can sign up for the newsletter on emmettmuckles.com, or you can follow me on Facebook. There's only two Emmett Muckles, and one is much older than I am. So find me on Facebook and Instagram. But today I have a great, wonderful, beautiful friend of mine, and her name is Cassandra Allen, and she has produced a book. Now, this is different than most of my other guests, because most of my other guests are people that I find that are remote around the world. But this is a colleague of mine. This is a fellow Toastmasters of mine, and she is here physically with me. How are you, Cassandra?
I'm doing well this morning, Emmett. Glad to be here. Glad to see you. I'm doing just great.
Now, you joined Toastmasters about a year ago?
About a year ago.
What made you join Toastmasters?
I joined Toastmasters because God sent me to Toastmasters. I did not want to join Toastmasters. I did not want to pay to speak to people.
Really?
Right.
I mean, keep going. I got something about that.
Okay. I love talking, but I just didn't want to pay to do it. In school, I loved speech class, but I didn't want to pay to do it, not because I'm like cheap, but because there was a lot of things going on in my finances at the time. However, I met a lady. She was a member of Toastmasters. She invited me, a lady named Phyllis. She invited me to a meeting. I declined. About a month later, I happened to be at the Y in Hammond, in the hot tub, and there was Phyllis again.
That's Hammond, Indiana.
Hammond, Indiana. And Phyllis invited me to Toastmasters again. And I said, no, thank you. But that next day, the following day, that morning in my prayer time, the Lord said the word Toastmaster to me. And I knew right away that he was telling me to join Toastmasters. And so I chased Phyllis down and got the information as to where the meetings were held, and I joined Toastmasters.
So out of that, less than a year later, this book comes out, which is titled Addicted. And you have a very interesting story about your life, and it reflects in many people. I mean, many people can identify with your story. So let's go into how the book came about. I mean, because I bet if you would have said 2 years ago you were going to write a book, you'd have been like, you out of your mind.
That's correct, Emmett. I never thought that I would actually write a book, but let me just say that God is ordering my steps. Many years ago, as my life was playing out, my girlfriends, I would talk to them and I would say, let me tell you what happened to me today. You would never believe this. I should write a book. And little did I know, I was in my 20s at that time. I'm not anymore. I'm at least 50. And little did I know that book was being birthed at that time, because our words have power and we have what we say we have. So I thought I was just talking. Little did I know that many, many years later, I would actually write a book.
So let's get into the book. It's not the book, because people can experience it for themselves. But you went through some serious hardships. You went through some relationship issues. You went through a lot of things. I've been privy to it because you presented this at a Toastmasters meeting. But for the sake of our audience, the title of the book is Addicted. So how did that come about? The addiction part?
Again, I spend time in the presence of God every day. It was God who delivered me from drug addiction. And I seek him every day to hear what it is that he wants me to do. I was seated in church one day, and a visiting pastor, a man who I had never seen before in my life, he called me to the front of the church and he prophesied to me. He said, God said to write that book now. And I knew that was the book I had been talking about.
Okay.
I didn't know how to write a book. I had never written a book before. So I started journaling, just journaling every thought, everything that happened, my feelings, everything. I just wrote them down. I didn't start writing a book, but then people would come and say, God said, write the book. Cassandra, you get started on that book. And so I got started. I sat down and I just began to write from the journal. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a book. That's what it was.
It was just a bunch of thoughts and actions and collections that you put down on paper.
Exactly.
Okay. Many people are suffering from addiction nowadays.
They do.
Or currently. And some of it is by accident. You know, with the opioid epidemic, you know, a lot of people go through physical trauma. They go to the doctor, they get prescribed something, and then they get stuck.
Yeah.
And then they can't get the prescription, so they churn. But was your addiction something that you said, oh, I'll just try? What was your drug of choice?
Originally, it's fine. Okay. Originally, it was cocaine for many, many years.
Was this in the 80s?
Yes.
Yeah, cocaine was everywhere.
Yes.
Everywhere.
It was in the late 80s.
Okay.
And my first husband, a boyfriend at the time, he was addicted. I didn't really know about drugs at the time. And I happened to walk in on him and I really didn't know what I saw. But later I found out, of course, it was drugs.
Was he smoking or?
He was smoking.
Okay.
He was smoking. And I stayed with him and I was in love with him, or what back then I thought. I was in love and I thought that I could stick with him and be a good person, show him a good way. I was working. I was always working, pretty smart in school, you know, like had my life ahead of me. I had plans and goals, but hanging in his circle, trying to convince him to change, I got sucked in. Yeah. I started using. So
was the addiction immediate or was it a gradual thing? Was it, you know, because I'm a control freak of my own body.
Okay.
So I got addicted to nicotine and I was like, if there's anything even remotely as powerful as this, I'm not going for it. It's a wrap. You know, I'm like a chicken. I'm like, I'm scared. Was your addiction something that just, was it gradual or was it like, you know how it hits you, how they portray heroin? You know, heroin, they say you shoot up and it's a wrap. You're done. You're into it. Or was it something that was a social thing? You were just being social and then next thing you know, boom.
It was gradual. I thought I was being social, but it just blew up on me. I never saw it coming. It was cocaine. It was cocaine for many years. It was cocaine. And I moved to an area. I always managed to pay my rent and to pay my car note. So I kept a nice place and I kept a nice car. Anything else, I found out how to work the system. I found out how to, you know, I had children and I was single.
Wow.
So those two things I kept. My kids, they played in sports and you went to the movies and we ate out and things like that, pretty much so I can get them out of the way so I can go and do cocaine. You
know, I have a friend of mine who I worked with who was a very high level and very intelligent. We worked for the same place and it was very technical. And he said to me, he was like, you know, I was a crack addict. I was like, huh? He was like, you wouldn't have known it. He was like, I was high functional. I was at work every day. He was like, I was at family functions. I did all I had to do. He was like, but as soon as like 8, 9, or 10 o'clock hit, I was in that life.
Yeah. It's ultimately I started using crack. And that boyfriend who was actually smoking crack and I was snorting cocaine, he said, if I ever catch you smoking crack, he said, I will break it. He said, I will break your face. He was physically abusive too.
Yeah.
But I did. I started smoking. I got to a place where I couldn't find cocaine in the area.
You're talking about for snorting?
I'm talking about for smoking. I started smoking. About the last 2 years of my addiction, I was smoking crack. And that just was altogether. As soon as I started smoking crack, I could not stop. I thought about smoking day and night and day.
That addictive?
I woke up thinking about it. I went to bed thinking about it. The only reason I would fall asleep is so that I could wake up and figure out how to get high all over again.
Let's digress a little bit.
Okay.
Because you said you smoked crack. I mean, you smoked cocaine. So is there differences in smoking cocaine? I'm trying to phrase this right. Because we have the term crack, but they had the old term like with Richard Pryor, freebasing. Mm-hmm. So were you freebasing at first and then moved to crack, or what was that transition? Or were you snorting and then?
I was snorting.
Okay.
And then I moved to smoking.
Ooh.
Yeah. I moved to smoking and immediately I began to cry out to God. I was doing things that I never imagined myself doing. I was being I didn't know who I was. I didn't look the same. I didn't act the same. I couldn't think about anything except smoking.
Right.
I tried to think about other things, but I had no control. People would tell me, and people think that it's a choice. It's not a choice. You're in this fog, this haze. And when like hell, like when your body wants water, we get thirsty and our body wants water.
Yeah.
My body wanted the crack and I couldn't make it stop. I could not make it stop.
So I mean, so you're actually drug free now. Did you go through NA or anything like that?
I went to Florida. I woke up one morning. This story is very interesting. I cried out all the time. Even high, even when I wasn't high, I cried out to God. I just fell on my knees and I cried a lot, asking for help because I didn't know who I was. I had no control over my life. Even in the daytime, I was walking in darkness. I can remember walking around and I had been high all night or whatever. And and just walking around and people are living life and playing. I wasn't living.
Yeah.
It was just this haze. It really was. It wasn't like the sun was shining like this veil. Really?
How many years was this?
Was I involved in drugs?
Yes.
So many I couldn't honestly even tell you.
Wow.
Many.
So when was your pivotal moment that you said your pivotal moment that said this cycle is broken? When did you say I'm done?
No, that's not my story. That's not my story. God is my story. I cried out to him to help me. One morning I woke up and I felt in my spirit, get the telephone book and call and look up rehab. And I did. I looked up rehab. I made a phone call. It was in Jacksonville, Florida. And they said, well, we'll accept you here, but you can come today. You have to fly. Like, I'm a crackhead. I don't have money for a plane ticket.
Were you here
I was in Gary, Indiana.
And hold on, let's back up.
Okay.
So you just went through the phone book and you found one place, but it's 1,500 miles away.
Yes. It was an 800 number.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. It was an 800 number.
So they say, look, we got a place for you. You got to get here today.
Yes.
And we can make this happen. And you're like, look.
I start crying. Because I'm a crackhead. I do not have money to go. And what they did, they flew me there.
Really?
Yes. They flew me there and they said, sometime later, you can pay us back when you get all straightened out. I got kicked. I was there and I did very well in the program.
All right.
First thing I packed was my Bible.
Right.
And I packed my clothes. My parents took me to the airport and there was a peace inside of me. And people there wanted me to pray for them. And I don't know how to, I never prayed, pray for me, but I did anyway. Mm-hmm. And I got kicked out for fighting.
I got kicked out of rehab for fighting?
And you have to understand, I'm not a fighter. They put me in a room with this young lady. There were people from all over the world there.
Right.
They put me there with this young lady and we just did not get along. And we both went to the counselors and asked if we could have other roommates. They said no. Well, we had a fight and we both got kicked out.
Oh.
And I was so distraught. I was even worse then because now I'm a failure even at rehab.
And you're in a different state.
I was in a different state.
And you didn't have the resources. I mean, someone paid for you to come to the place. So were you stuck in Florida now?
They paid for me to come back home.
They were like, you got to go.
Yes. I came back home. I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. I can do this. I'll use the tools that I learned there and I can stay clean. I went back home and I got a job. My dad helped me find a job and I started going to meetings and it was awesome. But the job, I got a sponsor.
Right.
And my job, here we go, was in a drugstore in the pharmacy department selling liquor.
How ironic, right?
And I thought, my sponsor said, you have to quit that job, Cassandra. Yeah. You can't be there. And I said, no, God sent me here. Well, make a long story short, I relapsed and I went even worse than before. I was doing smoking crack even worse than before. It was horrible, horrible. So everyone detached from me, my family, my friends, only people who smoke crack.
So when you are addicted like that and your body's craving it, your mental state is craving it, your soul is craving it, and you don't have the resources, I'm going to say this. I grew up in Detroit in the 80s. When I hit 9th grade, crack hit the streets hard. Took out a lot of cats that I grew up with. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are either dead or in jail. Okay. But one thing I did know, the people who were addicted to crack were some of the most financially resourceful people on the planet. They will make a way where there is no way. Did you find yourself in that kind of mode too? Like, I got to get this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I did. I sold things, out of my house. I sold myself.
Really?
To get, absolutely. I sold anything that I can, I let people talk to me like, I was nothing, whatever it took. I was in the company with people just because I knew if I'm in your company, eventually, you're going to buy some cracker. I did a lot of things and that normally I wouldn't do.
Right.
And through it all, everyone, it's so easy for people to say when you don't know. People told me, well, you're making that choice. I wasn't making that choice.
Yeah, that's a demon that's inside you.
Yeah, it's a spirit. And I didn't want it there. So I had to, they were making me feel worse. It's, like I was on a cliff. Yeah. And they were just pushing, just shoving me. And so I went to jail. I went to jail for theft. Here we go. So there was a young lady who came into my job and she wanted help doing her taxes.
Right.
And I told her, you can go online and do your taxes yourself. It's very simple. It's just you don't, right. Like me, very basic. And she said, you do it and I'll pay you. I did it 1 year and she paid me. That second year, now while I'm even deeper into crack addiction, I did her taxes for her and she needed her money right away. She was filing someone else's child or something and she needed the money right away. Look, but yay for me because she's paying me $100. So right. When I get this $100,
it's on.
Okay. I can smoke for a minute. So she, needed her money right away. She was in a jam. She didn't have the money to pay the file. She didn't have a bank account. So we sent it to my bank account.
Ooh. Wrong.
So when the state money came, I took it to her thinking, let me give her this money and I can get her now. And no, she said, when the federal comes, I'll pay you then, which was fine,
right.
And my intentions were to take her the money, but it came on a Friday.
Oh.
And so I said, well, okay, I can just spend, $100. And then when I get paid, I was still working.
Right.
When I get paid, I can pay her back. That day never came. And she went and filed charges, and they came to my house actually and picked me up.
That's a federal offense.
God is so good. It was charged as a misdemeanor.
Oh yeah, you got off light.
It was God, because my attorney, a public defender, of course, he said they're going to throw the books at you. They want to make an example out of you. And I'm like, I've never been to jail a day in my life. And he said, I don't know why they're like that. And so I'm praying and praying and praying and praying. And God told me what to tell him. And he said, oh, I never thought about that. And I just spoke honestly. I know I have to tell the truth.
Right. I
have to face up. Yes, I did it, but those were not my intentions. And the judge said, you never did anything like this before? Never. I never been in trouble in my life except that one time.
Did you bring up your addiction when
No.
Yeah, because
still tried to hide that. But here's what I found. Hiding it allows the enemy to keep you in condemnation. But God says there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So if he could keep me ashamed and feeling guilty and still have to lie for everything, I would never be healed, and God would never be able to use me to encourage other people who are in that dark place, who have no hope. I thought I would die in addiction.
Did you have any of those moments where you thought, the situations you can get in when you are living a precarious life, that you said, I'm about to die?
Yes.
Like somebody's about to take my life? Or
yes. A guy threatened to shoot me one day, and not for anything I did, but a guy I was with, he had lied on me, and this guy threatened to shoot me. So it was God who kept me to use me for right now. Writing the book, in the book, I tell everything. I don't hold anything back. It's a very simple book to read. My deliverance from addiction, this is how it happened. Although I got kicked out of rehab, I stopped going to the meetings. All the guys were trying to date me in the meetings, and they say you don't date after you get clean. Then when I wouldn't date them, they asked was I a lesbian, and so I woke up one morning and I didn't have a desire to use drugs anymore. I didn't have a desire to smoke a cigarette anymore. I was not looking for a relationship with a man anymore. I was not drinking anymore. And I'm like, hey, I don't even want it anymore. That's when you know it's God.
Yeah.
That's when you know it's nothing but God. And when he tells me to talk about it, one thing I found out recently, we're in Toastmasters and I share a lot about the abuse and the addiction. But one thing I still tucked away and hid was the prostitution part of it.
I come from the east side of Detroit.
Oh, okay.
I've seen everything. Mm-hmm. I've seen everything from when I was a kid.
Okay.
I've seen dead people.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people with gunshots. I've seen prostitution. I mean, like, I'm getting an ice cream cone and prostitution is right. You're like, oh, when you grow up in certain urban areas, you are exposed to things that, like this community that I live in, you would never see it out front. It happens.
Correct.
It really happens, but they keep it behind doors, from where we are, because it's a hustle, because of, we're just trying to make it. We're just trying to get things done. And, I can't judge anybody on that. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I had family members in my family who were pimps.
Okay.
So I understand it from a psychological standpoint, from an economic standpoint, from a power standpoint. So I can't judge anybody. And And I can understand how you hold it to yourself because you know people would judge you in a certain light. But how did you make that? How did you come to that? How did you come to say, look, this is a resource of mine that I can control and exploit?
First of all, I don't try and control it. God told me to write the book. Mm-hmm. He sends people to me. For example, when you invited me here, mm-hmm. I prayed about it and I prayed about it. I said, God, this is not about me. The book, me sharing my story, it's not about me. It's about God's plan.
Right.
It's about who he wants to reach, the people that need help. It's about people who are still in that dark place, who feel like I'm going to die this way. And I've done so many things wrong that I'll never be forgiven. My family will never accept me. And all of those things, it's just about God and where he wants me to go. Even on the way here, I was still praying, well, God, if you don't want me to go over here and do this, then you stop it. You make it stop, because I don't want to get outside of your will.
Right.
Even there's nothing hidden in that book. And when I share, there's nothing hidden, because like I said, even in Toastmasters, I was hiding that prostitution part. And I believe you were there when I talked about for the contest, when I gave the speech.
Yes.
So I went to the next level in the contest, and God says, talk about the prostitution. I'm going, oh, okay. So when we went to give the speech, it was a bit different.
Yeah.
So I added that prostitution element to it, and I realized you hid that part.
Yeah.
I had gotten comfortable in Toastmasters with I shared as much as I want to share, but I kept that part.
Right.
But I can't be healed. I can't keep moving forward if I want to hide parts of it, because there are women and men who are out and prostituting themselves for drugs, who feel like, hopeless, who feel like they can't recover, who feel like they are the worst, the dregs of society. But even in them, God's plan for their lives is greatness.
Let me ask you about the prostitution.
Okay.
How did it manifest in your life? Was it, because there are some things that we have in our life that we go, I'll do a lot of things, but I won't do that, but then something changes, because people always ask me, hey, see what happened over there. What would you do? And I literally say this, I don't know, because I'm not in that situation.
Correct.
You don't know what you're going to do until you are in the position of that experience.
Correct.
So how did it come about for you? How did that manifest?
As the addiction was taking over my life, I had to have ways to get money so I can get the drug and put that drug in my body. I was very selective about men. I wanted to be loved. I always wanted to be married and, just have my little house and
the white picket fence.
Yeah. With the dog running in the backyard and all of that. So men, they are like predators and, and
that's funny that you say that, because everything in the news now is basically saying that very thing. Yeah. It's a bit disconcerting, because it's really throwing good men under the bus. But keep going. I'm sorry.
It's okay. A lot of them, they really are, and they're looking at women from a sexual standpoint, and so I just took advantage of it. Some of them, I can just make them think that I'm interested, and they sit and talk. It's like, oh, I'll be so happy when they stop talking. Just give me the money and go. But that wouldn't last for long, because they're not going to keep coming over talking, and
so people would just pay you for company.
Yeah, because they thought something else was going to happen.
Right.
But you come over 2 or 3 times and nothing happens. It's like, okay, I'm not coming over and giving you my money. And so I had to put out eventually if I wanted that money.
Right.
So that's how that happened in my life.
But, we talking frank here.
We are.
That happens a lot more than people realize.
It does.
I mean, because, when people think of like prostitution, they think of somebody on the street selling like in a certain area, but they don't realize everybody prostitutes at some point in their life. They do. And it's not always sexual. You're given something with like a false promise. You're selling an idea. So, I understand that as well. But I want to digress. Ooh, I want to go way back.
Okay.
Way back. Let's go to childhood.
Okay.
There was this beautiful little girl, and she was experiencing the world. And she developed into the person that is you. What was that child like?
As a child, I was a middle child.
So you're the Jan Brady, huh?
Yes. Yes. And it was always, I was too young. Your baby sister, she's getting away with that because she's a baby, or you can't do this because he's older.
Right.
And so I didn't quite have a place, but, going forward, I wanted to be loved. There was a little turmoil in the household, a little bit going on in my household.
You had two parents in the household?
I had two parents in the household, but there was still turmoil and issues in the household.
Right.
Very significant issues in the household. Okay. And I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be out of there. I wanted someone to love me. And so the very first relationship that I had, I was very naive and, just this cute little girl who wanted the life. I wanted to be married and have a family.
Right.
And the first guy that I met, he just, Rico Suave, and he had the lines and everything. And I had sex with him. I got married. I got pregnant and he left.
How old were you?
17.
Oh, yeah.
I was devastated. And to top that off, my parents were like, you're not coming in here with bringing a baby in our house. When you go to the hospital and have that baby, don't come back here.
This is so weird that we look at teenage pregnancy as a negative thing, and I don't want to say negative thing, but we put the shade on it because I did my family tree. Okay. And so the earlier you go back, the shorter the time period is between the first child and the mother. And I started seeing it in like the different sides of my family because, I've been married twice. My first wife goes back to the 1600s. Wow. Her lineage goes back to the 1600s. And you'll see like there was this period where at 13, you were pregnant. Wow. I mean, consistently 13, 14, 15. And then we came into like the 60s and 70s, 50s, 60s and 70s. And all of a sudden, teenage pregnancy is not a thing. Even in World War II, dudes was going and fighting at 15 and 16 years old. And they were getting married, having babies. That's where the baby boom came into play. So, I'm always miffed at when people like say, you can't have this baby here because that's blood. Yeah. I mean, even my kids, I'm like, I know what it's like. Yeah. I don't raise a lot of kids.
So just imagine if you're 17, I was 17, I was pregnant. He left, went and married someone else. And then my parents said, you can't come here. Ultimately, they did let me come.
Right.
I didn't, what else was I going to do? But the damage was done. The words had been spoken.
The emotional damage was done.
Yes. The rejection, the feeling of being rejected. I don't blame anyone because no one told me, my parents told me, don't sleep around, and I did it. So I don't blame anyone,
right.
That happened. My life is my life, and my life now as it is being glorified, being used to glorify God. I'm not condemned. I'm not ashamed. I'm still going through the healing process in some areas, but my hope is to put it out there and help someone. If I could help just a person,
right,
to be encouraged, to have hope, to keep going forward. That's what people would tell me. Keep going.
Right.
Strangers. God would send strangers, and they would tell me, God said, trust him.
Does that period in your life come back to your present life and reflect or haunt you at any point?
Haunt me? No.
Okay.
It may try and come back, but because of me letting it go, my sins are already forgiven. Jesus did that for me. So I know that God loves me. I know that all of this is him. For example, I walked into the library, the Gary Public Library, and the young lady sitting behind the desk, she said, we went to high school together.
Right.
She said, Cassandra, what is this book about I see on Facebook? I said to her, I'll go get it out of my car and let you see the book. I brought the book and gave it to her. She looked. She said, why didn't you ask us to buy the book? I said, oh, I never thought of that. She said, here's my boss. Let me get her. I'm going to buy this book. She got her boss. Her boss bought another copy of the book. And then she said, well, I'm going to reach out to my boss and we're going to purchase this book and make it available in the Gary Public Library.
Oh, nice.
And I started crying on the spot because that was God. I didn't walk in there with that expectation. I didn't ask them. They asked me. And so everything that's happening everywhere that I'm going and where this goes, it's just all God. And as long as he gets the glory, then I'm good with it.
All right. So most people don't even have a clue how to begin writing a book. And God put it on you to put this manifest down and make it physical for the world. How did you even begin to say, I'm going to make a hardcover book?
I started writing, and I kept writing. And that's what I would say to anyone who wants to write a book. Just keep writing. Don't try and correct it. Don't try and change the words, the grammar, and just write it all. And once you have it all out of you, once you've emptied everything out of you onto the paper, then now you can go back and you can, the grammar, and you can rearrange and you can do all of that then, but get it all written down.
Okay. That's step number one.
Yes.
Now, how do you get it to be published?
Let God send who he's going to send. Really, because I tried to do it myself and I spent thousands of dollars on a publishing company who did not help me whatsoever. The only role they played in it was to say, well, are you done with that part yet? Well, if you need us to help you, it's going to be another $1,000.
Yeah.
Well, let us know when you're done. So I wasted. And then once the book was published, I was angry. I was angry with them. And I said, just stop calling me. Don't talk to me.
Yep.
I couldn't get a refund of any sort. So I felt like I had to go with them. Why not? I spent thousands of dollars, like $1,700.
Wow.
I paid them.
How many books did you get for that?
I got 10 books.
Good grief.
They didn't edit the book. That would have been another $1,500 for them to edit the book. So I had to pay someone else to edit the book. And once it was all done, they only wanted to give me 25%.
Oh my God.
Of the sales. So that was wasted money. I canceled that contract. So it was a complete
wash.
Loss of, yeah. And God sent someone to help me self-publish the book.
So how did you physically self-publish the book? How did you get it edited? How did you get the artwork? How did you get it bound and put out?
All of my stories are wonderful. I went to my pastor and told him about the book because in church, I don't want to do anything. I want a covering, prayer covering me, people covering me. And I don't want to be doing things that my pastors don't know about.
Right.
He introduced me to a lady and he told me this lady could help me publish the book. She had the book for 3 months. And I'm like, okay, what is going on? I paid her. When I got the book back, the manuscript back, it still had errors in it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, oh my gosh, now what? I was introduced to another lady who has her own company. She had it for 6 months. I paid her as she would complete a section, and she was doing a good job. What she did, I paid her in sections as she completed.
This is an editor.
Yes.
Okay.
She didn't finish it. She had other jobs and other businesses and travel a lot. And I'm like, oh God, what now? I'm paying out all this money and I still don't have a book. He said, do it yourself. I want you to pay her what you owe her and do it yourself. Like, I don't know how to be an editor. So I said, well, let me pay you what I owe you. And God told me to do it myself. So I paid her. I got it back. Now what? Lord, I don't know. He said, I need you to redo it because I told you to write about addiction. You wrote about your family. See, I didn't realize that I was venting in the book how I was hurt by some actions of my family members. He said no. So I had to go back and take those parts out, redo it. And so my oldest son, God put this idea in my head. My oldest son, we were separated for many years because of the addiction and things I did. We didn't talk for many years. And our relationship was slowly a little bit coming back. And I asked him to edit the book for me. Oh. Yeah.
So he was there for you.
He was there for me, and it helped him to understand. And he, like, Mom, I didn't know. I knew, but I didn't know the way that you felt on the inside. So then he edited the book. There was a young lady at church who had already written a book. And she said, well, I can help you do that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to hold a workshop with other authors, and I'm going to teach you all how to self-publish.
That's awesome.
So that's why I say God will send the people. Don't pay a publishing company because it's not what you think.
So with that, did you physically produce this locally, like get it bound and do the artwork? Who did the artwork?
The original company that I paid all the money to, they did the artwork.
Okay.
I told them my vision and they created that cover. So I was able to keep the cover they created even when I voided that contract.
All right. I have a question for you. I have a copy of the book. Now, this is a very important thing when you're publishing anything. Is this your ISBN?
That's my ISBN that I purchased.
You bought it through Barker's?
Yes.
See?
I did.
Yeah. All right. So, because that's really important, because if you go with someone who publishes your book and they purchase the ISBN, if your book becomes wildly successful, what will happen is any royalties will go to them and then they can pay you. So this is very important. And it depends on every item that you do. So if you turn this into an audiobook, you got to buy another ISBN.
That is correct.
That should be next, your audiobook.
It should, because many people are requesting that because as they're driving.
Yeah, that's the new mode now.
Yeah. I even have a friend who's blind and he needs the audiobook. So yeah, that's next. It's coming.
So through this journey, you said it was in the 80s that you first got introduced to this drug.
To cocaine.
And this transpired through the 90s?
Yes.
Through the early 2000s?
Yes.
Wow.
To about 2010.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like 30 years of addiction.
That's a long, long time.
Yeah, but you look so good and healthy, because drugs take a toll on people. I mean, not just the drugs themselves take a physical toll on the body.
Yes.
Not including the life that it's going to make, the path that it's going to make you, but you're just so vibrant. You're just so, God's grace is just shining through you. So this was a homage to the power that you're supposed to be here for somebody. I know, and it's taken us a while, because when I first heard, I was like, we got to get on the podcast. You got to get on it. But, I don't push people. I'll mention it and let you come to me. What is your goals for moving forward from now?
Moving forward from now, I am in the process of writing another book. And I guess I'm kind of dragging on that one too, because God is like, in the last week, 2 people have said to me, you're writing another, and these are people of God, you're writing another book. What's taking so long? What are you doing? God says, keep writing, keep writing.
Yeah.
There's not just one more book. There are many books. So I'm in the process of writing another book. I have a book signing coming up this weekend. And again, I don't know. It's not about me.
Yeah.
It's about God, because I'm just a filthy rag. God is perfect. When he told me to write this book, he had a plan, what he wanted to do, who he wanted to reach, where he wants it to go. And my role, my position is to follow, is to stay in communication with him and to follow his plan for the book.
Yeah. I saw something yesterday that really blew my mind. Since I was a kid, my mom used to always talk about Job. And my mom went through some physical things, and her job was to get me on this planet. That's how it comes out.
Okay.
And yesterday I was folding clothes again. And I was like, I pulled up YouTube and I pulled up the book of Job. I'm searching the book of Job because I want to hear it while I'm doing some stuff. And there was this different take on it where, in the end, Job is like, hey, why did this happen to me? Mm-hmm. And then this person who was saying it, he broke it down. He was like, God is all. Like, I do love you, but I have to manage everything in this universe. I have to manage everything, from the dirt speck to the fly to the planet that you can't see to the light that's coming to your eyes. Everything. In that moment, that's when it hit me that I am the Alpha and the Omega. I'm everything. Yes. And how powerful that is. Then once I saw that, then I started putting things into context. This is just yesterday, putting things into context. It's like, yeah, I have this pathway, and we all have these pathways. And ladies and gentlemen, you should really understand this. Someone is managing everything and has love for you and the interplay of everything. So there's an explosion that's in the sun that's 93 million miles away that has to get past all this stuff that has to hit us, that makes the plant grow, that feeds us. And then we interact, and we are the higher intelligent beings that interact with each other, that affect each other's lives. So you're starting to see where it goes. And just like this, I start a podcast, and I'm here to bring her story out to you. You never know how things are going to be, but if you go in this walk, and I'm going to say it like this, depending on where you are, God is different to you visually or spiritually, but it's all the same God. It just may manifest it in a different form, but you have to be careful because there's an entity that is the opposite of that. Don't let that influence you. And treat each other like you want to be treated. So what's the broader scope for this? Are you going to do a church circuit?
Here's what I do know. I don't have the answer to that question. Mm-hmm. However, I know that I will be speaking, that I will be interviewed, because God has shown me those things. So that much I do know.
Awesome. Where can people get the book? Is it just local, or do you have it on Amazon? How are you distributing the book?
So the book is available at Lulu. That's LULU.com. Mm-hmm. That's the publishing company that I use.
Is there a specific page?
You can just put in my name, because there are many books entitled Addicted. And
that's Cassandra Allen. Just how you spell Cassandra, it's not with a K, it's with a C.
Yes.
Cassandra Allen. The book is titled Addicted. What about your Facebook?
Well, let me just say, it's also available Barnes & Noble online and Amazon as well.
Okay.
And my Facebook page I keep it simple. My Facebook page, I have a Cassandra Allen Authors page on Facebook.
Okay.
And also, I'm Cassandra.Allen cassandra54@yahoo.com.
So that's how, if you want to contact Cassandra, you have the information. We'll put it in the show notes on emmettmuckles.com. I want to thank you so much for sharing your story and being here.
Thank you, Emmett, for having me. Thank you so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know how it goes. We are here. We are Hue, H-U-E, man in the image of man, and we're having an experience which makes us the beings. You have a given with the first two. We are people under the sun, giving us our hue. No matter if you're white, black, tan, cappuccino, whatever it is, that's your hue. We are made in the image of man, whether that's man or whoa, man. And we are having an experience. That's the part that we have issues with. It is all intertwined. You are on a path and you have to decide that path. If you are lost, you can always take it inside and take it up to a higher being that created you to help you for guidance. Now, all of it is built in love. All of it is built in love. I always say this. You really have to love yourself. You know, we got this thing. You remember I was talking about Job in the Bible, and the Satan was walking to and from the earth. And so this is why I say turn off the television, because that's why they call it television programming, because they're programming you through your eyes and ears. Here's a better one. Spend some time in the mirror. This is why I say when you get out the shower and you don't have clothes on, you are in your natural state. You are in the state that you came to this planet as, and that is the image you should love. Whether you have some spots, some wrinkles, some dimples, love that, because that is your human being. Spend time, look at how miraculous you are. As above, so below. Like the nebulae way up in the sky, they match the nebulae that are in your eye. If you get a close look, you will see how they match. As you think it, the body manifested. As above, so below. So see all that being that is you. Take time with it, inspect it, make sure that your temple is correct, and go in love. Till next time, love you all, respect each other, and treat each other justly. Peace.